everyone talks about Rome, 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 Rome. They talk about the Mongols these days, land empires, but no one talks about the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians, Srivijaya, the great maritime powers. They control trade. They maybe even more than anyone else. Why do they get so little credit? Thank you for your attention to this question. Yes, I mean, see, the world is very Eurocentric today, really Eurocentric. All our history is written in a foreign language. I'm speaking to you in a foreign language. All the standardized textbooks are written by Westerners or people who are culturally and intellectually westernized. So they will see everything from that perspective, and from the Western perspective, from the European or Occidental perspective, everything centers around Rome because that was the great empire that they produced, right? I mean, if you look at the US is a dominant power today. It controls the world's culture. It's got a huge cultural influence on the world. And what they say is what everyone believes, right? I mean, in India, we need American validation for to feel good about ourselves. So if you look at the Americans, what do they see as the origins of their culture? If you see the American Express credit card, what do you see on that? You see a depiction of a Roman centurion, don't you? That's what you see. So they also harken back to Rome. So the West is obsessed with Rome. And they talk about Rome constantly. If you go on social media, it's Rome, 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 nostalgia for Rome, and so on. Because they can't talk about a certain other empire, so they'll talk about Rome. Mongols, no one talks about Mongols until I started talking about it, actually. Before the year 2020, you did not hear anyone talking about the Mongols, okay? The Mongols were demonized. They were portrayed essentially as cannibals of some kind. And they actually were depicted historically as cannibals. No one spoke about the Mongols until I spoke about the Mongols, actually. There were a few books written here and there, but it never entered popular discourse until kind of I spoke about. So I will take some credit for that. But the West is obsessed with Rome. Everything came from Rome, perhaps from Greece, because Greece is the uh, spiritual parent, essentially, and cultural parent of Rome. So they'll speak about Rome, they'll speak about Greece, and they take some ideas from places like Egypt and the Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia, and so on. But they will never credit empires to the east of what they call the Middle East. They'll never credit any cultures from the east. So and also the Phoenicians, Carthaginians. So first of all, who were the Phoenicians? Who were the Carthaginians? For that, we must go to map. So let me bring map on screen. Yes. Let us bring the map on the screen and I will explain who the Phoenicians, who the Carthaginians were, and then we'll talk about Srivijaya as well. So, we recognize this part of the world, yes. Let's go westwards. Let's go to the place which we now call Israel. So, back in the day, around let's say 1000 BC or maybe around 800 BC, this region, which is now called Israel, there used to live a Semitic people there. Those people were called the Phoenicians, and so these people originated in this region, what is now Israel, and then they expanded westwards in North Africa, and they eventually, uh, you know, they eventually founded kingdoms and all that in North Africa, which eventually would become Carthage and so on. So the Carthaginians were the descendants of the Phoenicians. And they were a maritime people. They engaged in trade and they had kind of um, good, powerful navies and all that. And Carthage eventually almost ended up destroying Rome. Almost. Hannibal Barca was the guy who almost succeeded in that. So the Europeans do speak about Carthage and the Phoenicians. Then let's talk about Srivijaya. So Srivijaya is an empire that emerged in Sumatra. Sumatra is the western large island of Indonesia. Um, and Srivijaya was obviously a Hindu kingdom, and yeah, it was a pretty powerful kingdom, very culturally and civilizationally very rich, very similar to India. And its successor, one of its successors, eventually
was the Majapahit Empire, which was the greatest empire in the history of Indonesia. It was what we call a thalassocratic empire, a maritime empire, and they were pretty strong, pretty powerful in the entire region over here. And Srivijaya obviously was defeated by the Cholas. The Chola Empire invaded Srivijaya and defeated them, and turned the entire region into vassals of the Chola. And since we are talking about various empires that are kind of disregarded, let's talk about the Champa Empire, Champa Kingdom, which was in power for a very very long time. It ruled out of what is essentially southern Vietnam. It was again a Hindu kingdom or empire, again a thalassocratic or maritime empire. And this entire region was dominated by the navy of the Champa kingdom. Champa. The so-called South China Sea should be called the Champa Sea, because the Chinese never had any navy in the region. They never had any influence in the region. So that's the deal. There are so many such disregarded kingdoms and empires who have contributed so much historically and whose legacies still live on in various shapes and forms. But if you ask the West, it's all Rome, 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 Rome. That's the way things go, right? You see things from your perspective. That's why other kingdoms, empires, and cultures and civilizations get so little credit. That's just the way things go.